Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience and for being here with us today. My name is Alexa Foster. I'm a PhD student in marine science. I'm also the biodiversity coordinator for Students for Sustainability. This talk today is part of the Sustainability Seminar Series, which is sponsored by the Office of Sustainability and Graduate Affairs. Our seminar today is called From Deserts to Flyways, Saudi Arabia's Stewardship of Migratory Bird Conservation. And this talk is presented by Professor Mohammad Shobrak, who is a former professor at Taif University and a current technical advisor at the National Center for Wildlife. He has over 39 years of experience as a wildlife biologist and conservationist. His work is recognized both nationally and internationally for his work contributing to strategic conservation plans for both species and ecosystems throughout the region. Some of his projects include the Vultures Research Program and National Action Plan for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He's helped reintroduce ungulates and the Asiatic Kubara, and has also developed the program for best practices for birds and power lines. Thank you. Professor Shobrak also has a comprehensive academic background, including a bachelor's from King Saud University and a PhD from the University of Glasgow. Thank you so much, Professor Shobrak, for accepting our invitation to present and share your knowledge with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Alexa, for this introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, actually, the title is not my idea, Dr. Zahra's idea, and I just added only the conservation. So I tried to compile my presentation, because the title was so nice. So how we can, how I can bring it together. Therefore, my presentation will be, I will start with giving an introduction about the bird and the flyway and the value of birds. Also, I will go after that to the migration, the World Day, the Migratory Day, which is, I think, very, very important to know the history of that. And then we'll come to the desert, because this is something really important, how we, the species in the desert going and adapt to this kind of environment. Then we will go to the legislation and the threats, of course, and the legislation and the conservation, and then we'll end up any question that it's presented. So there is more than 11,000 species, bird species in the world is being identified. Among them is more than 1,445, which is threatened species. And there is also others, which is around 1,000, more than 1,000, are near threatened species. In every year, there is more than 50 billion birds, flying, migrate from the north to the south and to the east to the west. And in Saudi Arabia, we have, it's the last publication done by Aramco, which is the bird of Saudi Arabia. They identify 499. Now we are working in a field guide, which will reach more than what we identify until now. There is a possibility of 562 with all the vagrant species. There is 29 species are considered as endemic species to the Arabian Peninsula, with one species only, which is endemic to Saudi Arabia, which is the Asir magpie, which is up in the middle pictures. There are some species, it's been a long time, nobody's seen them. They are really fantastic. I've been working with one of them, which is the Arabian bustard. And unfortunately, it's been a long time, it's not been seen in the area. Saudi Arabia is located in a very important point for the migration. So it's located between 3 continents, it's also between 3 biogeographical zones, the Afrotropical, Palearctic, and Oriental. So this is made more diverse of bird species. Of course, the majority, 65% are them, of the bird in Saudi Arabia are migratory species. The bird used really, and why is bird? There are so many, more than, I don't know how many agreement and MOU related to the bird species, raptor, Iowa, which is African-Eurasian water bird agreement. There is a CMS. So there are several agreement and important internationally. So why is bird are important? Bird are used as an indicator. And if we see why I use indicator, they are finding everywhere in the, on all the continents. Also, bird are the most species that's being studied. And this is one of the review being done by BirdLife International about the number of publication being, especially related to conservation, is being published by BirdLife, and it's showing that the BirdLife is, the bird are the most studied among other species. Also possible to observe the bird and to identify the changes happening in the number, so we can relate that to the different reasons. Possible notes also inexpensive to realize, to do the study. So it's easy to, we've been doing several projects without kind of almost funding. So we do transit by car, by foot in some areas, especially when we work in the protected area. So we don't need much of money for that. And I think now with the study of citizen science, we can see how many that we can get record. I published one book about the bird of Kuwait with the IUCN. Is the majority of data is came from eBird and to monitor. So I think there is possibility and expensive to do the studies. Also, birds are mobilized, so we can know, we know now about the issue of disease and things, like now they're talking about avian flu. So this mobility that they give us some information about the climate change, and we will speak something about it later. Also, birds are, included in the religion, in culture. So in Islamic culture, example here, bird being named in the Quran more than 20 times. Also, as a culture, there is, we see some, the bird, we see them in the money, we see them in different culture, they have different altitude related to the bird. So like example, the owl, they have in one region, they wisdom, there are other region like scary or something, like the owl. Also, we see now, and even in the cartoon, they try to keep some of the threatened or extinct species to be, as a cartoon, woodpecker and others. And so it's really included in many culture, in many countries around the world. Also, it's been in most of the agreement now, they start talking about ecological connectivity. This term is very important for the conservation of the migratory bird, because this term, it's to try to protect the whole, we believe that each, this migration is for something. And we believe as a Muslim that there is no, and I'm sure in many culture, that there is nothing God create or done without nothing. So this migration is for something, and I will speak about it later. But anyway, this ecological connectivity is to try to protect this movement between, because these bird, they will do something in another area for this migration, and I will speak about it later. I will give first an example that how is this kind of ecological connectivity. One of the species that is already known, and I think is being seen here in the campus of King Abdullah, is the steppe eagle, one of the threatened species, globally threatened species. And by the way, Saudi Arabia in 2017 presented to the Convention of the Migratory Species to uplist this species to the Appendix 1. So it's really important. There is large numbers start to be coming and wintering in Saudi Arabia. Anyway, this species, it's eat some of the species of rodents in the breeding side in the Central Asia. When it's come to Saudis starting feeding mainly in the organic waste. So you see them more in the garbage dump. So they reduce a lot from these organic, and they start increase in number in Saudi because of the organic waste is being provided. So there is changing the food. It's go to Africa, and there is a publication mentioned that is they eat between 1,600 to 2,000 and something termites a day for one bird. So the changing in the food, this is what we call ecological connectivity. So they do something in different area. So this is what we need to protect, this ecological connectivity. I will give another example because I cannot leave the vulture alone. Also, they give these species free services. So when they do that, this is a free services for us. It will be benefit. And this is what we also, and very important services they give to humanity. So we did some study, back in one of the protected area in the east of Taif. It's called, now it's become a royal protected area. And we seen that, the number of livestock, as you've seen, it's become really large in the kingdom. So the species was taking 35% of the carcasses around that area. Of course, 35, but this is the large. The only, they take 32%, and the rest is 3% is taken, or 4% taken to mammals. Of course, there is large number, so the rest will go with the insect. But anyway, they are taken from the vertebrate, the large amount of food, from these carcasses, so they help in rid of the disease. We know about the issue in India now. They have an issue with the medicine called the diclofenac, and this is this issue, reduced the number of vulture. It used to be from 40 million to 11,000. And this is the consequences of that another, there is a lot of money being spent to reduce the issue of rabies, because there is dogs being increased, so the effect of these disease become really very large. Now we go to another to try to see about the migration. So what is the definition of migration? Migration is a regular seasonal movement between breeding and non-breeding. And there is also called a political migration. What is the political migration? This is what is used in agreement. So in agreement, if species or subspecies move between two countries, it will include in the agreement. But it's even for feeding and come back or other. So this is the difference between the political migration and the ecological migration. In the last 20 years, the terminology of flyway has become more used. And it's been a definition in 2006, which is taking the whole entire area, which is include the breeding, the wintering, is including even the stages, whatever, it's included. And they identified in the flyway, there's a nine flyway being identified. But to make, we know that international cooperation to protect this flyway is very important. So they divided to four political, what I call it, flyway. So these political flyway, which is 4 Eurasian African flyway, Central Asian flyway, and Asia, Australia flyway, and the Americans. Here, Saudi Arabia is located in the first two, which is the Eurasian and Central Asia. Eurasian African, you have the waterbed agreement, which is cover the majority with also the Raptors MOU, which is both are signed by Saudi Arabia. And the Central Asia is an initiative which has been approved recently in the Samarkand with 2000, the COP14. Anyway, now I will shift to another, how these birds are moving. So the movement have a strategy for these birds to move from one point to another. So we know that birds that move in 4 ways of moving. So one, which is flapping, using flapping. The second, which is soaring, like raptors example. So they have this kind of change is very, very important to know them because it's, if we want to conserve them, we have to understand how they move, how they fly, how they go to reach their point. And the other one, which is the swimming like penguins, and the other one, which is walking like ostrich. Unfortunately, the Arabian ostrich is being extinct, but there are some work to, now in Saudi to reintroduce the others, the closest species from Africa. These migration and these movements are really fascinating. If we come to see the first example from both of these two, which is the flapping like northern Witir, this is very interesting migration they have. There is two populations, one they move east and the other one move west. The one which is move west is come to Saudi and the area in the region, and it's moved more than 15,000 kilometers. And every year they do that. And the other one, which is they come to spend, the time, the winter here, like the imperial eagle. There are others, but anyway, it's the imperial eagle. They come and they spend time. They use the soaring way, which is they use the thermal and to heat, the thermal, which is when the surface of the ground is being heated. They heat the air and then they will push them up. So they use the soaring way of movement. Now, how they move from one spot to another, and this is interesting because it's very important in conserve how these birds they move. There is three type of movement, which is they call hopping, which is, they move for a short distance, the maximum up to 1,000. So this one is not need to feed much to have fats. It can, like move a little bit and go on. So hopping, so it's good to know where these areas they stop. And there is the skipping, which is longer a little bit. And this area, the food there is much than the one before. And then we come to the other, which is jumping. This is really interesting that there are species from, the what they call it, the longest or the world record of movement. It was 13,560 kilometers in one shot, direct. And the interesting in this, it's taken in 11 days only. It's taken to cross. This is from the, where they breed in the north, in the Siberia up to southern Australia. So it's really interesting, and I will speak something later about this kind of movement in our area. So also the way that the bird is moving is they use different type of migration. We call it, there are different type. The first one, which is the narrow-fronted migration. This one is they use one way or one direction. So this one is really important because if any obstacles happening in the road, it will be affect the whole population. And this is here in Saudi, it's like, along the Red Sea. This is one of the, there are more birds that they fly, use this kind of migration along the Red Sea. And we will see some of the photos that's showing, these studies that's been done with satellite transmitter. This area is very important for flyway for birds. Then we have the broad-winged, broad migration, which is broad front migration. This one, you find the species that each, going from even different population will go from different side. So if something happened with some, I will not say that they are not important, but at least it's not as important as the one which is have one direction. And I show before the Siberian crane for the narrow-fronted, which is one of the population being extinct because of the hunting during the during its migration. Now, the broad-fronted it's used a large area, for migration. So if something happened or any obstacles, we will not say it's not important, but it's not as similar as the first one. The other one, which is the loop migration, which they go from one side and they return from the other side. And this is, we've seen it in the steppe eagle example, which they cross to Africa when then they go back from the other side. And the other one, which is what we call it leapfrog migration. This is also very important in conservation because some of the species has, when they mix with the semi-migrating species, and one of the example we have here in our, is the Hobara example. Hobara, they show that there is what we call it, there is no different, there is gene flu among the whole population from the east to the China. So there is, and only the one which is not have any kind of gene flu, which is really a separate population, which is located in the south of Arabian Peninsula in Yemen. And this population probably now is finished or mixed up with some of the captive breeding program. Also, we have the molting migration. There are some birds which they use like print goods. They go in one area, and this is happening in ducks and goose. They go in one area to molt, and that time they are vulnerable to any kind of problem, or any threats. And then the dispersal, which is happening mostly with the young bird when they finish some time of raptors, they move long distance. So, we put some transmitter on one of the species in Mahazat or the eastern of Taif. And after a few months, 3 kilometers, after 2 months actually of fledging, we found them 300 kilometers from there. So they move almost around the kingdom of, and sometimes, especially the one which is close from the border, they could go to Oman or to go to UAE. Then these birds, they need sites. These sites also have a different functional, which is really important to protect. So we come to, there is the pre-breeding areas. And this is before, maybe the people for the seabird, they know that bird, before they start to breed, they come in the coast and they start displaying. So this is very important area for them to start. And after a large, after long migration, they come, they start in this breeding, in a breeding area, then they will go to the breeding site. So these are very important. Breeding site is important. And this is where they come and breed. Post-breeding area. And this is clear in the seabird again. It's when they finish, normally the young, the juveniles, they move together to one of the area, what they call it a nursery area. And molting, and we talk about it. And the stages where they stop sometime to feed. And the non-breeding destination, this is what, when they go for outside the breeding season to wintering. If somebody feels sleep, tell me. Bottleneck site, also very important. The bottleneck is neat. It's a site that all concentration come there and they start to cross a CEO. So what about the migration happening in Saudi? We can divide them according to the time they are arriving. So passage migrant, so the passage migrant, they spend only short time from, of course, Saudi is a long area, is a small continent, but when they cross from ours, if they come from the north or crossing, 2-3 weeks. And then they go to their destination. They started almost like end of, sometime in August, they started some of the wobblers and even the white stork. We've seen them with a large number during end of August, and they just cross and go to spend the winter in Africa. And very few they return. There is some, but the majority they go from the other sides. The majority of species. Another, which is what we call it the summer visitor. The summer visitor is for the bird, which is they come for breeding, and some of the majority coming from Africa to breed in Saudi. And this is something very interesting. They come during April, May. We can count the seabird as a winter visitor also because they come and breed in Saudi. But it's very interesting to know that even we used to have a good population of breeding of European turtle dove. There are population coming from Africa to breed in Arabia, but unfortunately with the hunting, a lot of them, a large number is being wiped out from hunting. Anyway, The other one, which is winter visitor. These are the birds which is they spend the winter here and they leave in February, March. They start going back to their breeding site. And the dispersal, which is I mentioned before, like the small bird, especially the bird of prey, they start roaming around far away from their breeding site. This slide, it will take me to the World Migratory Day. The World Migratory Day is almost this week. Many of the places are celebrating, and I think this presentation is part of the celebrating the cows thing for this. Anyways, the day is very important for the whole for campaign to really to make the awareness, education, raising the awareness, education about this migratory day. Also to find out to the public and all about issues about bird. And the first celebration is started after in 2006 from the African-Eurasian Water Bird Agreement. In their third meeting, they already agreed to half a day. Then the CMS find the success of the breeding. Then they agreed the party in 2017 in Manila. They agreed on the first for CMS meeting. So they have 2 days and they come together to find out, what is the scheme or what is the theme for that. Or they make, every year there is what they call a slogan or a theme for the celebration. This year is the insect. And insect, as we know that it's in the title of insect protection, it's bird protection. Why insect? There is a big question about, especially we've been talking before that it's, that the bird are playing role for making the balance in the other area of when they breed for, finish from, controlling the insect. Anyway, there is a connection between the bird and the insect. First, insect and bird, they are found all around the globe, everywhere. The second, insect is essential food resource for the birds, even during migration. It is very important to help them. And we have different species that knowing that being affected by the decline of the insect. Anyway, the scientists seen recently that there are a declining in bird and also in insect. And that's why it's become really important to raise this issue. And there are, most of the agreement now, the CMS, the Convention of the Migratory Species, the CBD, all been mentioning about this issue. And the importance of protection, I'm not going to, there is a study being done that 40% of the insect is being declined. And you can imagine, some of these species that is being declining by different issue like insecticides, which is affected by the, especially these pollinator like bees and honeybees and even the butterflies. And so it's being affected, and this is declining, is affecting the other, even the crop, the other, affecting the economy from reducing these pollinators. Anyway, it's also, there is these birds, they rely in their migration in some of the species of insect flying, or migrate, like the Amur falcon. The Amur falcon move from one point to another point, and it's following one species of dragonfly. So, and feed during the migration on that dragonfly. So it's very essential for the bird migration. And the issue here is, if we take this bird, this is the bird I'm telling you, was talking how the ecosystem services they provide. This species, there is a study being published that they found they eat 2.5 trillion termites during their migration, which is something really very important. I was attending the meeting, I was one of the Saudi delegation during the Raptors MOU. And this bird, they fly from from the Indian continent to South Africa. And during that time of migration, it's been more a massive kill of that bird during migration. So, and you can imagine, during the meeting, the representative of South Africa say, what will will cost us? This bird, they eat 2.5 trillion termites. So what it cost us as a South Africa to rid of that? So that means we will use pesticides or insecticides, and how much we will pay for the health of the people from using these pesticides and insecticides. So there is other sequences that it will affect the human from that. So they are doing free services for the humanity. And that's what I'm saying, that migration is not for nothing. There are some rule for them in another side of the world. Now we come with another interesting things. We all heard about the climate change and the effect of the climate change. And what is the affecting of the climate change in the bird? Again, there is, I give an example. There are studies being started last year in East Africa. They fed the transmitter on birds and 4 species of waders. One of them is the gray blubber. Anyway, it's moved from there to the central, to Siberia, and it's reached its destination for breeding in the 2nd of June and leave from there in 24th of July. So there is 2 months of time for it to breed, raise the chicks, and go. So what's happening with the issue of climate change? Normally they arrive just before the insect is coming out. So they incubate, then when chicks hatch, it's come with there is an abundance of insect and food availability. But now they come already with the climate change, they come already the insect is abundant. So the chicks, when it's being out, is not having enough food. Because these waders, as you've seen in the picture, they have a different size of bill. They have to feed really strong and quickly so they can reach the size, the bill, the bones, and the wings to be flying to take this distance. Because that bird example, which is flying from Siberia, going to Australia, more than 13,000 is breed there. So he's need to feed quickly and get some, fast before to start. So the maximum they spend only 3 months. So any time, the time is very important for them to reach in the right time. And even here in the desert, and this is what we come to the desert, how is things, Here, the resident species, normally, they are adapted when there is drought, when there is no enough food, they will not breed. So there is some kind of adaptation for them. And there is also another example for the climate change, which is being published quite time ago, that one of the species which is also migrate to Saudi, which is the pied flycatcher, normally during the breeding, the adult feed the chicks from the larva of the butterfly. Now they reach there, already the butterfly become an adult, and thus it's very difficult to these chicks to feed on. So they start having some issue digesting these issues. Anyway, even which I mentioned that we have issue in our desert, but when there is they are really adapted. When they are no food, they will not continue in the feeding. Their adaptation is really incredible. And I think there is several studies being published here from cows, especially related to the coral reef and how there are species are really adapted to the environment and adapted to the heat. Although there are some, they already have some issue, but also the desert species adapted to what's happening. Therefore, when we come to the issue of ecotourism example, we put the point, we have put the question mark in summer because it's a very difficult or the species to adapt if there is another problem is facing, which is like the disturbance or whatever. Anyway, during the summer, these birds, they try to avoid the heat. They go even inside the burrow of Euromastic. And you can see even the migratory species, some of them, they use the Euromastic's burrows to be away from the heat. So they try to be, inside these burrows for a long, the whole, almost from 8 to late 5 o'clock, quietly. Sometimes they go and see if there is any problem and go back. But anyway, they have to adapt to this kind of environment. I will give you one of my favorite example, which is the lappet-faced vulture. The lappet-faced vulture is really remarkable. It's breed in the top of the tree. It's the only species of vulture breed about, in the tree in Saudi. It's lay one egg, December, and stay 50, 56, 40, 54 to 56 days for incubation, from 4 to 5 months of rearing before they fledging. So they reach the time of summer and they are in the top of the tree. The temperature is 65 degrees centigrade. So it's standing in the top of the tree without, this chicks is really and waiting for fledging and move. So it's really incredible. We know that bird that they use the unfeathered areas for thermal regulation. So always you can see them, maybe adult shade them, or they try to avoid, the heat by not facing the sun. Always keep the unfeathered area in the head and in the legs away from the sun and move with the sun. Anyway, we try to find out how is this bird adapted to this environment. So we use two techniques. One is using a transmitter, which is give me the difference between the pulse. Anyway, it's using a receiver and antenna, and you have to be in the side. And the other one, which is using the data logger for measuring the temperature. Unfortunately, the one for temperature, after a while, the manufacturer tell you it's for a period 4 months, but after 2 months, you have some error in that. Anyway, the one which is much better, which is the logger, and unfortunately, we only done 3 chicks. But the result is remarkable. You can see how is the bird adapted, and the difference between the lowest, the maximum, and the minimum is not exceeded the 3 degrees. So what I did, I thought, why I play with the formula? So there is a correlation between the air temperature and body temperature. So I say, okay, let's use this formula for correlation to see if the bird will be adapted. So increase the temperature, the air temperature, and it still give me, not that. It's still in the, normally the fat inside the body will start melting after, when it's reached 45, 46. Your mastics can handle up to 46. So your mastic, which I mean the spiny tail desert lizard. Anyway, so it's really remarkable. And I think the desert species have something for humanity to learn from with the climate change. So this is the message. I go back in this slide in the issue of the insect, because we need to know what is the threat. And I mentioned it before, like insecticides, fire, pollution, invasive species, habitat loss, and climate change, and all of these. Also, when we come to the threat to the birds, there is the illegal killing, hunting, and trapping, and trade, poisoning, electrocution and collision, habitat loss, and climate change. These all also affecting the birds. And I will try to point some of these issues really big in Saudi. One of them is the illegal hunting, and this is I will show you what Saudi Arabia been doing for this issue. And also the poisoning, we know about the Arabian leopard. The Arabian leopard, until now, from more than 2 or 3 decades, with the cameras all and studies, no sighting. But the poisoning show more than 5 specimens of. And now we've seen many of vultures also, being reported of poisoning. So poisoning is a big issue also. Electrocution and collision with the power line. And we think that there is also possibility of poisoning from the diclofenac, the issue which is happening with the vulture, because it's used also massive here. So this slide will take me to another, which is an institutional work is being done here in Saudi. So in 2016, we know that the Ministry of Environment and Water and Agriculture established. Then in 2018, the national strategy was environmental strategy is being approved. In 2019, the center, the special environment for which is special forces for the environment, and this is the implementing body for the implementing body for the strategy and the regulation. In 2020 is the establishment of the centers, and then in 2021, 3 of regulation, important regulation is being issued, which is the hunting, the trade, and the protected area. So for the hunting, which is, I think, one of the big issue here now in Saudi, we started working with international organizations like the BirdLife and to try to identify what is the, how is the hunting here in Saudi. And we found, you can see in the table in the right, in the left side, how much it's, is the highest in the region. And so therefore is really something have to be done. So in the last few years, we tried to, to develop the standard and the criteria for that. So what the criteria has been used that all bird or species that been mentioned in the religion, because Saudi Arabia is used, Islam is the main institutional law is in the Islamic law. So therefore, any species, we found that hoopoe, shrikes are included in that. There are some mentioning to protect them, and the hoopoe, of course, is something. Anyway, there are some other things it's around that, from the Prophet. So we use the Sharia, we use also the scientific study. Any scientific show that there is a decline, and we use normally the IUC in red list because they are the one which is putting the threatening, so we have something like that. Then we use the international regulation. So there are regulations that, especially these agreements which is signed by the government of Saudi, like the CMS, like IWA, like Raptors. So these are considered in regulation, in the standard, and to select the species. Then sometimes you have problem of disease or something, and so maybe raised in one of the species, like we've seen in, now with avian flu, sometimes one species have an issue, so the Ministry of Environment and Agriculture and Water can, point one of the species for that. Anyway, we also select a way how we identify, this is identify the species, but how we identify the bags. So what we thought is we say, okay, 1% of the total population of a species is accepted. So what we did, we done with the hunters and see what's the species they review that, and so we found what is the important species then, and take out all the species which is in the standard. So we don't use like turtle dove, which is make the hunters are really angry. So it's one of the species forbidden because they are threatened species and they are in the agreement. So we use this type quickly formula. So we get the average population from, they normally in the rate list, they give you the maximum and minimum. So we take the average, then we take 1%, then we distribute it among all the range states, then we find out how many can be hunted for Saudi from that state. Of course, these things did not make hunters happy, but now it's in the last 3 years been, or 2 years been negotiation to increase this number by taking some of the areas, because some of the country are vagrant in some of the species. So we take more to increase the number for Saudi. If you see some of the species like common quail example, it's the calculation show 5 thousand, but it's two with the number of hunters we have. It's really very low. So it's been increased and taking some of African species, African countries, which is not use and take that 1%. So it's increased to more than 25,000. But it's still less than the other countries. Anyway, there are also wildlife trade, and there is in the National Center for Wildlife, they divide the department in, to provide the license, and it's an electronic. Now, if you want to go to hunt, you go to this platform and you can quickly get the number, the species. And also there is a regulation being every time developed. There is a wildlife crime department or unit, which is go in all the media. If they find any violation in that, they start looking to who, and they send to the authority, which is the environmental forces, or the special forces for environment, and inspection, which is really very important. And the violation, or the very important to have the fine, or for each thing. And this is being really high to make the things really, like killing a turtle dove, you need to pay 60,000 Saudi riyals. Anyway, this is some of the fine that is being pointed for some of the species. For the protected area, there is a plan to increase the number of protected area in 2030 to 30% of the country to be from the terrestrial, and 30% of the marine will be protected. Because of the time, I think I spent a long time. Awareness is very important, but awareness not only to tell, about only the bird conservation. Also, if somebody done something wrong, there are some, names being, now recently you can see some names being put in the newspaper about the people, and direct the people who done the things. So this kind of things all together, it's been fascinating for many countries, and I think with the support of recently in Samarkand, in CMS, the Convention of the Migratory Species in Samarkand, we in Saudi Arabia been awarded, or the National Center for Wildlife been awarded about the work and the support of illegal, to stop this illegal hunting, not only in Saudi, but in whole the region. And by this, I will stop here, and thank you very much for listening.
Thanks again to Professor Shobrak, and also for thank you to the Office of Sustainability and Graduate Affairs, and thank you all for being here. We have a gift to present to Dr. Shobrak, but yes, everyone else is free to leave. Thank you so much again for attending.